Hi everyone, well, time for some more book reviews. I've got two here, so I'll do two separate videos of them. The first one is this book, oh my goodness, okay. Dragons and Dinosaurs by Darek Isaacs. Creation or Evolution. Now this is not the kind of book I would ordinarily read, but someone asked me to read it, and let's just say I did not like it at all. I think it's a very flawed book. It kind of got me worked up a lot, but okay. Right, so there's two premises that he proceeds from, which I think are fundamentally flawed. The first one is that the Bible is an all or nothing proposition, that everything has to be taken literally or the whole thing's wrong. And because the Bible mentions dragons a few times, therefore he believes, he's a literalist, he believes everything in the Bible is literally true, so therefore dragons are literally true. And he then sets about trying to prove that. So he's starting from a foregone conclusion and trying to prove it. So that should give you an idea of the level of science involved. It's definitely twisting and shoehorning things to fit his preconceived idea right from the outset. And the other thing, the other kind of premise that he goes from is that dinosaurs and humans, if they can be shown to have coexisted at the same time, then all of evolution is wrong. Now, or disproved, basically. Now, I don't believe that dinosaurs and humans coexisted at the same time anyway, but even if they did, it's a stupid premise to try and disprove evolution on, because what about all the living fossils that we have? What about lungfish? What about coelacanths? What about horseshoe crabs? What about tuataras? There's so many living fossils that are quite known and widely accepted in science, some of which have come back from, or existed for hundreds of millions of years. So that as a methodology to disprove evolution is just crazy anyway. It's just doesn't make sense. So when I started reading this and I was getting so worked up, I started writing some notes, which I can't find now. So I won't go through this blow by blow, because that would take a lot of time, and honestly I guess someone should do that, or someone needs to do that. Probably it already has been done, but I'm not going to do that. But some of the issues that I had is some of his proof is so spurious and contradictory. Let me just show you a really good example of what he thinks is a illustration. And mind you, it's so small you don't even get a good look at it. This is supposedly a dinosaur fighting with a mammoth in a carving, which I think was in America. Oh no, sorry, France. You don't get a good look at the evidence. There's not a high degree of scientific scrutiny around it. Some of it's interesting though. This particular one that I believe is in Cambodia is quite interesting. That does look very reminiscent of the Stegosaurus. And look, even if some dinosaurs did survive to live with people, again, that doesn't kind of prove or disprove anything really. I mean, we know living fossils are a thing, but I don't know, some of this is just so patently ridiculous. I mean, look, it really needs someone to go through and debunk it blow by blow, but that's just not my role in life. But I can see that it needs to be done. And I'll tell you a funny thing too. He talks about the Bible being incontrovertible, and then he's got a whole chapter which discusses different translations and different words and different meanings. So, even by his own evidence, it is controvertible, not incontrovertible. And then he talks about, and this is something I'd be interested to read more about, an instance where a fossil, I believe it was T-Rex, was found, and they identified red blood cells in there. Now, he seems to suggest that those red blood cells are still, or that there's still soft tissue there. Now, that may or may not be the case. I don't know, but then it was carbon dated, and I'm just trying to find it where he talks about that. And you know, so this was one argument to debunk the whole evolution thing, and I think it was carbon dated to 30,000 years. But then he says, well, you don't need to accept that anyway, because obviously it can be a lot less than that, because he thinks it's only 5,000 years, because in his view the world's only 6,000 years old. So even when he finds something he doesn't like, he's still, I wish I could find that little bit now. Oh, here it is, here, yeah, okay. According to the AMS testing, the Triceratops registered on multiple tests an average of 30,890 plus minus 380 years old. The hadrosaur was, okay, so there's other dinosaurs, sorry, where they found soft tissue. The hadrosaur was tested to be 23,170 plus minus 170 years old. This is a result that no evolutionist wants to see, and it is why the previous T-Rex that we discussed, in my opinion, has not been tested. The mere presence of carbon-14 existing in not one but two dinosaurs utterly extinguishes in its entirety the evolutionary timelines that have been errantly established. Dinosaurs are only thousands, not tens of millions of years old, and dinosaurs are certainly contemporaries with men, mammals, birds, and all other modern life forms. Blah, blah, blah. However, if we believe these bones are even younger than the upper age of 30,000 years... okay, it should be noted that the biblical creation model placed man and dinosaurs together, and that is confirmed by the radiocarbon dating. However, we believe these bones are even younger than the upper age of 30,000 years. I will not delve deeply into that now, but theories have been formulated that demonstrate that whether it is accelerated decay rates or other factors, it is not likely at all the real ages of both Triceratops and the hadrosaur are closer to 5,000 years old. So it's just shoehorning results. Even when he gets a result that's of half of value to him, it still contradicts his young Earth theory, so he's got to kind of shoehorn it and say, well, no, actually it is even wrong. I don't know, look, it's circular thinking to its max. You start out with a preconceived notion or premise, and then you just try and fit everything into to confirm that. And I don't know, he's highly selective on what he says about evolution. It's you know, a lot of those scientists in the 19th century were very racist, and that is something that's widely accepted and spoken about now in anthropology and other scientific circles. But he doesn't look at the role that Christianity and religion had in that belief system at the time as well. So he does kind of try and, I guess, undermine evolution by looking at some of the, I guess what you call immoral aspects to the society at the time that produced it, or, you know, where they discovered evolution. So, and that, I guess, in a broader sense, is one argument I have against the religious way of thinking as opposed to the scientific way of thinking. The scientific way will always reassess and update and grow in light of new learning or understanding, things that can be proved, whereas the religious mindset just stays pretty static. I'm not saying that there's not a role for spirituality. I actually have a spiritual kind of outlook myself, but I don't think religion is a way to capture it. And really, the one thing which I thought was pretty wrong was, yeah, he suggests that people who don't believe in God don't have a moral centre. And frankly, that's just immoral to put that out there. That's just so wrong. So anyway, look, this is probably a broad general review. The book did get me worked up. There's so many instances where I think his examples are just patently wrong. And, you know, he's mildly, I won't say racist, but mildly condescending towards Indigenous people in certain sections here. And he'll take very disparate mythological examples of dragons with very different descriptions of these animals and say they're all actually the same thing. There's so many things fundamentally wrong with his approach that this book I do not recommend. I'll tell you something though which I did find interesting in it. The thing that I got the most out of it is it's an insight into the mindset of people who think like this. And okay, so on one hand that's interesting just now, knowing that there are people like that. But when you project that kind of thinking back in time, now, he actually talked about the Dark Ages, which is a bad phrase, but that period in European history. And he talked about how Bibles were chained to the altars because people couldn't steal them, and I knew so people couldn't steal them. And I knew that a lot of the Bibles were in Latin to keep it out of the common language, so that it was just a power thing from the Catholic Church at the time to prevent people being able to think for themselves or have access to this kind of stuff themselves. And anyway, it made me think what a big revolution the printing press was. But also, you know, I got a sense of the kind of thinking that these people had through this guy's example in this book. And then I extrapolated it back to that period he was talking about. And it just made me realise, well, they had nothing to go on. They had, so if you were like a commoner or a peasant, you had what the religious powers were telling you, which is really a way to keep in control of you. And you know, to make you to conform to them and for their benefit. And you had a worldview where you thought everything was static, everything was made by God, there was no development, no evolution, no broader context of time, of ecology, of the way things related to each other ecologically in the here and now, but over time as well, just how things grew and changed. And you know, the other thing which really gets me with people who are against evolution is they talk, and look, I suppose it's a fair question, but you've got to, and it's one which I'm researching more to understand the answer to, but something which a lot of creationists continually say, and this guy, Darek, says it a lot in this book, that you can't create genetic material, you can't create information. And so how can we have evolved from simple organisms when we have a much larger set of chromosomes and more DNA? And look, that's a fair question to ask, but it's certainly not exploratory in his answer. They'll just pose that and say, well, you can't create new information. But if you start actually researching the genetics in it, you can, because chromosomes get entangled, you get new material that's attached to other chromosomes. There are various ways, mutational errors, there are things like that that can create new genetic material that goes on in the cells. But of course, none of that's discussed in the book. You will just throw up a question and say there's no answer to it, therefore it's all wrong. And again, that gets back to the fundamental premise of how he explores things. He's going out with a predetermined outcome rather than in an open way exploring a particular idea and looking at where it takes you as the evidence and the ideas unfold, and you start to explore and find out exactly what is scientifically provable and what isn't. So look, sorry I haven't written a blow-by-blow debunking of this book, but I hope you get the gist of it from here. The other book, which I'm going to review in a tick, so look for that. This one here is fantastic, and it actually gives a whole lot of examples. I mean, one of the big things that creationists hate, or is put forward, is the lack of transitional forms, and this book has chock-a-block full of them. So look for my review on that one. And look, I certainly mean no offense to anyone who's religious, but you know, everything's got to be up for inquiry, and you can't. I think it's bad for everyone, particularly anyone who's religious, and it's very disingenuous to say, well, my beliefs can't be questioned, or that's offensive, so you can't go past this point and inquire further or make other points. So honestly, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I have a lot of very religious friends. As I said, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. I do understand that there's a component to life, which is another thing that bugs me. It characterises all atheists as kind of being the same, and that once you're dead, and that's all you believe in. Well, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in that. So anyway, this is not, it touches into religion, but it's not, I don't want to just go off on that tangent too much. But anyway, look, I found all of his examples, really spurious. A few of them I think interesting, like that thing in Cambodia, but you know, again, even if there is some overlap between any dinosaurs that survived that the extinction event there 65 or 66 million years ago, anyway, even if any survived, it doesn't disprove anything. So that was it. Circular thinking. If you've read this, I'd be interested in your thoughts. Certainly no disrespect to religious people, but I think this gentleman needs to have more of an open mind in the way he examines this topic. So that was all. Hope you're having a great day. Okay, see you then. Bye. And you know what, one last thing which I wanted to say, which I forgot, is I'm just so glad I live now and this time, this place, and I just want to thank everyone in all these millennia gone by who argued against tyranny and oppression and prevailing orthodoxies that just didn't make sense, and the Renaissance and the scientific revolution. You know, he doesn't even mention Alfred Russel Wallace when he talks about evolution, which he should as well, but just all those people who thought for themselves, many of whom suffered terribly for it. You know, that's given me the freedom. Well, I guess you always have the freedom to express your thoughts, don't you? But it's nice to live in a culture where I can do that a lot more openly than those people did. And this book, because it starts off on a circular, well, it starts off with a premise which he suggests, which he believes cannot be disproved or overcome, then this kind of thinking in this book, and that circular kind of thing where you shoehorn everything in to prove your foregone conclusion, that's actually that's oppressive, and it's oppressive to people who are gullible enough to read it, and it's oppressive to Darek Isaac's, there he is there, to his best, you know, to what's best for him as well. So it's just sad. You know, we should just have an open spirit and just explore. That's what I think. So, okay, thanks guys.